The transport ship landed on forward base That-9 with a heavy thud. Kira Yoon stepped out into the cold air and looked around at the massive military base. Soldiers from 12 different alien species walked past her. Some were tall and covered in scales. Others had 4 arms or glowing eyes. All of them were bigger than her. Kira was 17 years old. She stood at 5 feet 4 inches and weighed barely 120 pounds. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She carried a standard military bag over her shoulder and wore the gray uniform of the Coalition Defense Corps. A group of Dracorian soldiers stopped and stared at her. They were reptilian warriors, each one standing over 7 feet tall. Their green scales shimmered under the base lights. One of them laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made other soldiers turn and look. "Is this a joke?" the Dracorian asked his companions. "They are sending human children to fight the Molokai now?" Kira said nothing. She walked past them with her head held high. The orientation room was filled with new soldiers from across the galaxy. A Valorian officer stood at the front. He had pale blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to look through everyone. When his gaze fell on Kira, he smiled in a way that was not friendly at all. "It seems someone got lost looking for the nursery," he said. The room filled with laughter. Kira found a seat at the back and waited. She had heard worse things before. Words could not hurt her anymore. Commander Vextel entered the room, and everyone fell silent. He was the largest Dracorian Kira had ever seen. His scales were dark red, almost black, and a long scar ran down the left side of his face. He carried himself like a warrior who had seen 1,000 battles, and won every single one. His yellow eyes scanned the room and stopped on Kira. "Was told that High Command was sending us reinforcements," he said slowly. "I see they have sent us soft-skinned humans instead. Tell me, little one, have you ever killed an enemy?" Kira met his gaze without flinching. "Not yet, Commander." "Not yet," Vexel repeated. He shook his head. "The Molokai will eat you alive, perhaps literally." After orientation, Kira received her assignment. She read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. Sanitation duty. While other soldiers trained for combat, she would be cleaning floors and disposing of waste. It was a deliberate insult, and everyone knew it. Zara, a human woman 5 years older than Kira, found her in the barracks that night. She had short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too much death. "Do not take it personally," Zara said. "They treat all humans like this at first." "I did not come here to clean toilets," Kira replied quietly. "I came here because the Molokai destroyed my home. They killed my grandmother right in front of me. I will not sit and wait while others fight." Zara studied her for a long moment. There was something in this young girl's eyes. Something hard and determined. Something dangerous. 3 days later, Kira was assigned to a supply convoy heading to the southern outpost. It was supposed to be a simple mission. Safe, boring, perfect for a child soldier who needed to be kept out of the way. The attack came without warning. Malachi scouts ambushed the convoy in a narrow canyon. The insectoid warriors swarmed from the rocks above, their black exoskeletons gleaming. They were fast and brutal. Their claws could cut through armor like paper. Soldiers screamed and scattered. The senior officer in charge froze completely, his training forgotten in the face of real terror. Kira did not freeze. She watched the enemy carefully. Her grandmother had taught her many things before she died. One lesson was burned into her memory. In chaos, look for the pattern. Every enemy has one. The Molokai were not attacking randomly. They moved in waves, always from the same direction. They were waiting for signals from their leader. A larger insectoid standing on a ridge above. Kira grabbed a maintenance drone from the supply truck. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. She sent the drone flying toward the ridge, programmed to release its welding torch in a bright flash. The flash blinded the Molokai leader for just a moment. Without its signals, the other warriors hesitated. That moment was enough. "Fire at the ridge." Kira shouted, "Take out the big one." Soldiers who had been running for their lives turned and obeyed. They did not know why they listened to a teenager. Perhaps it was because she was the only one who seemed to know what she was doing. The Molokai leader fell. Without it, the remaining scouts retreated into the rocks. When the chaos ended, 3 soldiers lay wounded on the ground. They would have died if the attack had continued for another minute. Instead, they were alive because a 17-year-old girl had kept her head while everyone else lost theirs. Commander. Vextel arrived with reinforcements an hour later. He surveyed the scene with cold eyes. I heard what happened, he said to Kira. You got lucky. Luck does not win wars. He walked away without another word. But Zara had watched everything. She walked up to Kira and nodded slowly. That was not luck, she said. That night, Kira lay in her bunk and listened to the other soldiers talk. Intelligence reports had come in. The Molokai were gathering their forces for a massive attack on a civilian colony called Haven's Rest. 20,000 people lived there. Men, women, and children. Coalition leadership had already made their decision. They did not have enough forces to defend the colony and protect the main battle lines. Haven's Rest would be sacrificed. Acceptable losses, they called it. Kira's hands tightened into fists under her blanket. 20,000 people. Acceptable losses. She had heard those words before. They had said the same thing about her colony, about her grandmother, about everyone she had ever loved. Kira stared at the ceiling for a long time. When sleep finally came, she dreamed of fire and screaming. And when she woke up, she knew exactly what she was going to do. Orders or no orders. She would not let another colony burn. They ridiculed Teen Warrior until the battlefield. Enemy bowed to her as Commander Part to Kira found Commander Vexel in the command center the next morning. He stood before a large holographic map, studying enemy positions with his arms crossed over his massive chest. Commander, Kira said, I need to speak with you about Haven's Rest. Vexel did not turn around. The matter is closed. High Command has made their decision. 20,000 people will die. Yes, and if we divert forces to save them, 50,000 soldiers will die instead. War requires sacrifice, human. Perhaps when you are older, you will understand. Kira stepped closer. Her voice remained calm, but there was fire behind her words. Sacrifice means nothing if leaders are not willing to risk themselves first. Those people are not numbers on a screen. They are mothers and fathers and children who have done nothing wrong. Now Vexel turned. He looked down at her with something between annoyance and curiosity. And what would you have me do? Throw away trained warriors to save farmers and shopkeepers? I would have you fight for the people you swore to protect. The Dracorian's eyes narrowed. You speak bravely for someone who has never commanded anything. Go back to your cleaning duties, little one. Leave strategy to those who understand it. Kira left the command center without another word. But she was not going back to cleaning duties. She was done waiting for permission. That night, she gathered them in an abandoned storage room. Zara came first, her expression serious but supportive. Then came others. A one-armed Valorian named Vex, who had been removed from combat duty. An elderly Krallian engineer named Mox, who everyone called too old to fight. 3 human soldiers who had been sidelined for minor injuries. 2 young recruits from species so small that no one took them seriously. 12 soldiers in total. The forgotten ones. The dismissed ones. The ones nobody would miss. I am not going to lie to you, Kira said. What I am asking is dangerous. We will be disobeying direct orders. If we fail, we will probably die. If we succeed, we will probably be executed anyway for insubordination. She paused and looked at each of them. But there are 20,000 people on Haven's Rest who are going to be slaughtered in 3 days. I cannot live with that. If any of you want to leave, I understand. There will be no shame in it. Nobody moved. Mox, the old engineer, spoke first. I have been waiting for someone to say these words for 30 years. Tell us your plan, young one, Kira smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. For the next 2 days, she barely slept. She studied everything the Coalition knew about the Molokai, their biology, their communication methods, their battle tactics. Most officers considered the enemy to be mindless monsters. Kira saw something different. The Malachi communicated through chemical signals called pheromones. Each warrior received instructions from a higher-ranking soldier, who received instructions from an even higher one. It was like a chain of command taken to an extreme level. Every single action required approval from above. This was their strength. Millions of warriors moving as one unified force, but Kira realized it was also their weakness. The Malachi could not handle unpredictable behavior. Their entire system depended on enemies acting in expected ways. When something unexpected happened, they had to wait for new orders before responding. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight," Kira explained to her team. "But we do not need to beat them. We just need to confuse them long enough to evacuate the colony." They left Base Thatnine at midnight, using a maintenance shuttle that Mox had quietly reprogrammed. By the time anyone noticed, they were missing. Were already halfway to Haven's Rest. The Malachi advance force had already surrounded the colony when Kira's team arrived. 3,000 enemy warriors against 12 soldiers. The numbers were impossible, so Kira decided not to fight the numbers her grandmother had taught her about guerrilla warfare. Never attack where the enemy is strong. Never fight the battle they want you to fight. Use their size against them. Make them afraid of shadows. They started with the traps. Simple, but effective. Explosives buried in the paths the Malachi used. Tripwires connected to flash grenades. Sound devices that mimicked the screams of dying Malachi warriors. When the first explosions went off, the Malachi advance stopped. They waited for orders. Kira's team hit them from a different direction, then disappeared before they could respond. For 18 hours, 12 soldiers held off an army. They never stayed in one place for more than 10 minutes. They struck and vanished like ghosts. Every time the Malachi adapted to one tactic, Kira changed to another. Meanwhile, Zara and Mox worked with the colonists to prepare evacuation shuttles. It was slow and terrifying work. Mothers held crying children. Old people prayed to gods they had not thought about in years. By dawn, the shuttles were ready, but the Malachi had figured out what was happening. They broke through the defensive line and charged toward the landing zone. Kira stood in their path alone. She did not run. She did not hide. She stood there with her weapon raised and fired into the charging horde. It was insane. It was suicidal. But it bought 30 precious seconds for the last shuttle to take off. The Malachi were close enough for Kira to see their mandibles clicking when coalition reinforcements finally arrived. Ships filled the sky. Soldiers poured out of dropships. The enemy fell back, overwhelmed by the sudden assault. Commander Vexthal landed with his personal guard. He walked through the battlefield, stepping over Malachi corpses, till he found Kira. She was on her knees, exhausted beyond words. Her armor was cracked. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead, but she was alive. Her team was alive. And most importantly, the colonists were alive. "You disobeyed direct orders," Vexthal said. "Commander, you risked military assets without authorization." "Yes. Commander, you could have gotten everyone killed." Kira looked up at him. "But I did not." Vexthal stared at her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his guards. "Take her into custody. She will face tribunal for insubordination." As the guards led Kira away, something unexpected happened. A young Valorian soldier stepped forward and raised his hand in salute. Then another soldier did the same, and another. Soon, soldiers from a dozen different species stood at attention, saluting a 17-year-old human girl in chains, Vexthal. Vexthal watched with an expression that was impossible to read. Kira did not look back. She kept her head high as they led her to the transport ship. She had saved 20,000 lives. Whatever happened next, nobody could take that away from her. But deep in her heart, she knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. They ridiculed Teen Warrior, till the battlefield enemy bowed to her as Commander Part 3. The Coalition Military Tribunal was held in a great hall that had seen 1,000 trials before. Massive columns rose toward a ceiling painted with images of ancient battles. Judges from 12 species sat behind a curved bench made of black stone. Hundreds of officers filled the gallery, all watching the small human girl who stood alone in the center of the room. Kira wore simple gray clothes. Her wrists were bound with energy cuffs that hummed softly. The cut on her forehead had been treated but would leave a scar. She stood straight and looked directly at the judges without fear. Admiral Vortok, a massive creature with 6 eyes and armored skin, spoke first. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. Kira Yoon of Earth Colony New Busan, you stand accused of insubordination, theft of military property, unauthorized deployment of forces, and endangering coalition assets. The penalty for these crimes is death. How do you respond? I respond by asking a question, Kira said clearly. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Prisoners did not ask questions at tribunal. Admiral Vortak's eyes narrowed. You are not in a position to ask questions, human. Then I will make a statement. He returned slowly, looking at every face in the room. How many of you have actually fought the Malachi face to face? How many of you have stood close enough to smell their chemical signals? How many of you have watched them hesitate because they did not know what to do? Silence fell over the hall. Not a single hand was raised. Thought so, Kira continued. You make decisions about this war from rooms like this one. You move soldiers like pieces on a game board. But you do not know the enemy. You do not understand how they think or how they fight. And that is why we are losing. Enough. Admiral Vortok slammed his armored fist on the bench. You will answer for your crimes, not lecture this tribunal. The prosecution presented its case. Hours of testimony about broken protocols and violated orders. Military lawyers spoke about the chain of command and why discipline was more important than individual judgment. They painted Kira as a dangerous example who would inspire chaos if she went unpunished. Then came the defense. Kira had no lawyer. She spoke for herself. I do not deny what I did, she said simply. I only ask that you consider why I did it, she called witnesses. Zara testified about the convoy ambush and how Kira had saved 3 lives when senior officers froze. Mox the engineer spoke about the evacuation and how Kira had given the colonists hope when they had none. One by one, the people she had saved stood before the tribunal and told their stories. A woman from Haven's Rest was the last to speak. She held a sleeping child in her arms. This is my daughter, the woman said, her voice breaking. She is alive because of the girl you want to execute. My husband is alive. My parents are alive. 20,000 people are alive because one person decided we were worth saving when everyone else decided we were acceptable losses. The tribunal chamber fell silent. Even Admiral Vortak seemed moved. Then the alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the ceiling. A voice came over the communication system, sharp with panic. Emergency alert. Malachi Strike Force has breached the outer perimeter. All combat personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Chaos erupted in the tribunal chamber. Officers ran for the exits. Guards drew their weapons. The judges looked at each other in confusion. No one had expected an attack on the coalition headquarters itself. Explosions shook the building. The lights flickered. Through the high windows, Kira could see Malachi dropships descending from the sky like a swarm of angry insects. Release my restraints, Kira said to the nearest guard. I cannot do that. You are a prisoner. Another explosion hit closer. The guard stumbled and nearly fell. Somewhere in the building, people were screaming. We can argue about rules later, Kira said. Right now, people are dying. Let me help. The guard hesitated for 1 second. Then he reached over and deactivated her cuffs. Kira moved immediately. She grabbed a weapon from a fallen soldier and ran toward the sounds of battle. Zara appeared beside her, armed and ready. Like old times, Zara said with a grim smile, like old times. The Malachi had breached the command center. Elite warriors in black armor were cutting through coalition soldiers like they were nothing. Officers who had commanded thousands of troops from comfortable chairs were now running for their lives. Kira saw the pattern immediately. The enemy strike team was heading for one target. The war room. If they reached it, they would have access to every coalition battle plan, every troop position, every strategic secret. With me. Kira shouted. She did not wait to see who followed. She led a counterattack through the corridors of the command center. The soldiers who followed her were a mix of species and ranks. None of them knew why they were obeying a teenage prisoner. But she moved with such confidence that following her seemed like the only reasonable choice. They hit the Malachi from behind. Kira had learned from her grandmother that attacking when the enemy expected you to defend was the most powerful weapon of all. The fighting was brutal and close. Kira found herself face to face with a Malachi captain. The creature was twice her size, its claws dripping with blood. It clicked its mandibles and released a chemical signal calling for support, but its support was not coming. Kira had already ordered her soldiers to take out the signal relays. The captain hesitated. Without orders from above, it did not know what to do. Kira did not hesitate. She fired 3 times. The captain fell. When the last Malachi was killed, Kira stood in the war room surrounded by dead enemies and grateful allies. Blood covered her clothes. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Admiral Vortok found her there 20 minutes later. He looked at the bodies on the floor. He looked at the soldiers who stood around Kira like a protective wall. He looked at the teenage girl who had just saved the heart of Coalition Command. "The tribunal is suspended," he said slowly. "And then what?" Kira asked. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. Almost respectful. "Then we have a different conversation. The Malachi are preparing their largest offensive in decades. Our current strategies are failing. High Command believes we need a new approach." He paused. "Some have suggested we need someone who understands the enemy, someone who thinks differently than we do." Kira understood what he was saying. She understood what he was offering. "I am not interested in politics," she said. "Only interested in winning this war and protecting innocent lives?" Admiral Vortok almost smiled. "That is exactly why we are having this conversation." Behind her, Zara squeezed her shoulder. Whatever came next. Kira knew everything had changed. They ridiculed Teen Warrior until the battlefield enemy bowed. To her as commander part, for the War Council chamber, was filled with the most powerful military leaders in the coalition. Admirals and generals from 12 species sat around a massive table, their eyes fixed on the small human standing before them. Kira listened as they explained the situation. The Malachi were gathering forces for their largest offensive in 50 years. Intelligence suggested they would strike at the Nexus Gate, a strategic position that controlled travel between 3 major star systems. If the Malachi captured the Nexus Gate, they would cut the coalition in half. "Hey, we have tried everything," Admiral Vortok said. "Every strategy we develop, they counter within hours. We need something different. We need someone who can think like they do, but act like we cannot." He looked directly at Kira. "We want you to command a battalion in the coming battle, not just humans. A mixed force from every species in the coalition." The announcement caused an immediate uproar. Officers shouted objections. Commander Vextel rose from his seat, his scales darkening with anger. "This is madness," the Dracorian declared. "She is a child. She has no formal training. You would give her command over warriors who have served for decades." "I would give her command because she has done what those warriors could not," Vortok replied calmly. "She held a position against impossible odds. She saved this very building from destruction. Results matter more than age." Vextel's yellow eyes burned with fury. "This is desperation disguised as innovation. You dishonor every soldier who has earned their rank through proper service." Kira stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "Commander Vextel is right about one thing. I have not earned this through normal service. But I am not asking for this position because I want glory or power. I am asking because I believe I can save lives that will otherwise be lost." She met Vextel's gaze without flinching. "If you think I am wrong, then prove it. Challenge me. Test me. Do not dismiss me simply because of my age or my species." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what Kira was suggesting. Dracorian. Tradition allowed any warrior to challenge a commander's fitness through ritual combat. Vextel stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, human. Tomorrow at dawn, the proving grounds. We will see if you have the strength to lead." Zara found Kira in her quarters that night. The older woman looked worried. "You know he will destroy you," Zara said. "Vexel has killed enemies with his bare hands. You cannot beat him in a fight." "I know," Kira replied. She was sharpening a small blade that had belonged to her grandmother. "But I do not need to beat him. I just need to show him something." "Show him what?" Kira looked up with calm eyes. "That I will never quit, no matter what." The proving grounds were packed with soldiers from every species. Word had spread quickly about the challenge. Everyone wanted to see the human girl fight the legendary Dracorian commander. Vexel entered the ring first. He had removed his armor, showing the powerful muscles beneath his scaled skin. His claws were extended. He looked like a monster from ancient nightmares. Kira entered wearing simple training clothes. She carried no weapon. She looked impossibly small compared to her opponent. "You may yield at any time," Vexel said. "There is no shame in accepting your limitations." "We will see," Kira replied. The fight began. Vexel moved like lightning despite his size. His first strike caught Kira across the shoulder and sent her flying. She hit the ground hard and tasted blood. She got up. He struck again and again. Each blow was powerful enough to break bones. Kira blocked what she could and absorbed what she could not. Blood ran from cuts on her face and arms. Her left eye began to swell shut. She got up every time. The crowd grew quiet. They had expected a quick defeat. Instead, they were watching something they had never seen before. It was a human who refused to fall. Vexel increased his attacks. He was no longer holding back. He threw Kira across the ring. She crashed into the barrier and collapsed. She got up. He slammed her into the ground so hard, the stone cracked beneath her. She got up. "Stay down," Vexel growled. "You have proven your courage. There is no need for more." Kira spat blood and raised her fists. Her hands were shaking. Her vision was blurring, but her voice was clear. "I told you, I never quit." She charged at him. It was not a smart attack. It was desperate and wild. Vexel caught her easily and threw her down again. She got up, the sixth time. This time, something changed in Vexel's eyes. He struck her again, but the blow was slower, more careful. He was not trying to hurt her anymore. He was testing her. Kira fell and rose. The seventh time, Vexel stood very still. The entire arena was silent. Then the Dracorian commander did something that no one expected. He sheathed his claws. He stepped back, and he bowed. "Enough," he said quietly. "You have the heart of a Dracorian. You have fought warriors twice your size who gave up after the first blow. You rose 7 times. I will not strike you again." He straightened and looked at the watching crowd. "I withdraw my objection. If this human wants to command, she has earned the right to try. I will follow her orders in the coming battle." The arena erupted. Soldiers cheered and stomped their feet. Species that had been rivals for centuries celebrated together. Zara helped Kira off the field. The young woman could barely walk. Her body was broken in a dozen places, but she was smiling. "That was insane," Zara whispered. "That was necessary," Kira replied. Training began 3 days later, after Kira had recovered enough to stand. Her battalion was a mix of soldiers that no other commander wanted. Different species who did not trust each other. Veterans with old injuries. Recruits too young and frightened to fight properly. Kira transformed them. She ran every drill alongside her soldiers. She slept in the same barracks. She ate the same food. She never asked them to do anything she would not do herself. Slowly, the battalion began to come together. Soldiers who had hated each other started to work as teams. Fear was replaced by confidence. Chaos became order. Vexel watched it all with growing respect. One night he approached Kira privately. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "I judged you by what you appeared to be, not by what you are. That was my mistake." "You were not wrong to question me," Kira said. "Leadership must be earned. You helped me earn it." The Dracorian nodded slowly. "The battle for Nexus Gate will be the hardest fight of this war. High Command has assigned us to hold Korth Pass. Every other commander refused the position. They call it a death trap." "I know," Kira said. That is why I requested it. Vextel's eyes widened. You requested it?
What?
Why would you ask to be placed in the most dangerous position? Kira looked at the stars through the window. When she spoke, her voice was calm and certain, because the enemy expects us to defend. They do not know how to handle humans who attack. She turned to face him. We are not going to hold Korath Pass, Commander. We are going to use it as a launching point. We are going straight for the enemy's heart. For the first time in his long military career, Vextel smiled. Now that, he said, sounds like a plan worth dying for. They ridiculed Teen Warrior until the battlefield enemy bowed to her as commander part. The night before the battle, Kira gathered her battalion at the edge of Korath Pass. The mountains rose around them like giants made of stone. Somewhere beyond those peaks, the largest Molokai army ever assembled was preparing to crush the coalition forever. I am not going to give you a speech about glory or honor, Kira said to her soldiers. Those words are for people who have never seen real war. What I will tell you is this. The enemy thinks they know how we fight. They have studied our tactics for centuries. They believe this war is already won. She paused and looked at the faces around her. Dracorians and humans. Valorians and Kralians. Species that had been enemies for generations, now standing together. We are going to show them they are wrong. The plan was simple in concept, but almost impossible in execution. While the main coalition forces defended the Nexus Gate, Kira's battalion would strike directly at the Malachi command structure, cut off the head, and the body would fall. They moved through the mountains like shadows. Kira had spent weeks studying the terrain and finding paths that no army had ever used. Paths too narrow for Malachi formations, tunnels too small for their heavy warriors. The enemy never saw them coming. The first strikes hit the Malachi communication relays. Without those relays, commanders could not send orders to their soldiers. Confusion spread through the enemy ranks like poison. Units that had been moving, with perfect coordination, suddenly stopped, waiting for instructions that never came. But the Molokai were not fools. They adapted quickly. War General Cothran, the supreme commander of the Dominion, sent his elite guards to hunt down the attackers. The battle became a running fight through the rocky passes. Kira's soldiers were outnumbered 10-1, but they used every trick. She had taught them. They never stopped moving. They never fought where the enemy expected. They turned the mountains into a maze of death. Soldiers fell on both sides. Kira watched friends die. She saw Vex, the one-armed Valorian, sacrifice himself to hold a narrow bridge while others escaped. She saw young recruits who had been terrified 3 weeks ago fight like veterans. Zara was hit by an enemy blast while covering Kira's advance. She collapsed with a wound that should have been fatal. "Leave me," Zara gasped. "Finish the mission." No. Kira lifted her friend over her shoulders with strength she did not know she had. We do not leave anyone behind. She carried Zara for 2 miles through enemy territory until they reached a medical station. Only then did she continue forward. The fighting grew more intense as they approached the Molokai command center. Cothran had pulled his best warriors to protect himself. The ancient war general was not going to fall easily. Reports came in from across the battlefield. Coalition forces were holding at the Nexus Gate, but barely. Everything depended on what happened in the next hour. Kira led the final assault personally. Her battalion crashed into the enemy defenses like a wave against rocks. The fighting was hand-to-hand, brutal and bloody when they finally broke through. Kira found herself standing in Cothran's command chamber. The war general was waiting for her. Cothran was ancient, his exoskeleton scarred from 1,000 battles. He stood 8 feet tall and radiated power like heat from a fire. Behind him, his elite guards formed a wall of black armor and sharp claws. "Oh," Cothran said. His voice was deep and resonant. "This is the human child who has caused so much trouble. I expected someone larger." "Size has nothing to do with strength," Kira replied. The war general studied her with compound eyes that had watched civilizations rise and fall. "You cannot win this fight, little one. My guards will tear you apart before you take 3 steps. Perhaps, but I am not here to fight your guards." Kira straightened her back and spoke with perfect clarity. "I invoke the right of challenge. Single combat? Your law, not mine. The winner decides the fate of this battle. Silence fell over the chamber. The elite guards looked at their commander. Everyone knew the ancient law. It had not been invoked in centuries. Catherine made a sound that might have been laughter. You challenge me? A creature that has lived for 700 years? That has conquered a dozen worlds. Yes. You know you cannot defeat me. Maybe not. Kira drew her weapon. But I believe in something worth fighting for. Do you? The war general was quiet for a long moment. Then he waved his guards aside. So be it. The duel was one-sided from the beginning. Catherine was faster than anything Kira had ever faced. His claws moved like blades of light. He wounded her again and again. Blood soaked her uniform. Pain screamed through her body, but she kept fighting. She used everything her grandmother had taught her. She used her small size to dodge attacks. She used his momentum against him. She refused to fall no matter how many times he struck her. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Catherine's attacks grew slower. Not from exhaustion. From something else? Why do you keep rising? He demanded. You are beaten. Your body is broken. Any sane creature would yield. Kira spat blood and raised her weapon again. Because giving up was never an option. She attacked. It was desperate and wild, but it was also unexpected. She slipped past his guard and pressed her blade against his throat. She could have killed him. One stroke and the war would be over. Instead, she stepped back. Catherine stared at her. In 700 years, no enemy had ever spared his life. Why? He asked. You had victory? I am not here to destroy you, Kira said. Her voice was steady despite her wounds. I am here to show you that strength. It's not the only virtue worth respecting. Mercy, compassion, the courage to be kind when cruelty would be easier. These things matter too. The war general stood perfectly still. His elite guards watched with confusion. They did not understand what was happening. Then Catherine did something that changed the war forever. He bowed, not in defeat, not in submission. In recognition, you are not what I expected from your species, he said slowly. I have conquered worlds filled with warriors who fought for power and territory. But you fight for something else. Something I had forgotten existed. He straightened and looked at his guards. Order our forces to stand down. This war is over. The aftermath was chaos. Coalition commanders could not believe what had happened. The Molokai, who had never surrendered in their entire history, were withdrawing from every front. Kira watched the enemy ships depart from a medical station, where doctors worked to save her life. She had lost a lot of blood. Several organs were damaged. They said she was lucky to be alive. She did not feel lucky. She felt tired, but also, for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Months later, the coalition offered Kira the rank of admiral. She declined. I do not want to give orders from a comfortable room, she explained. I want to be with my soldiers. In the field, where I belong. Vextel became her permanent second in command, not because anyone ordered him to, but because he chose to. The Dracorian, who had once called her a child, now called her the greatest warrior he had ever known. Zara recovered from her wounds. She stood beside Kira as new recruits arrived at the training center. Soldiers from every species. Many of them had heard the stories and asked specifically to serve under Commander Yoon. One young alien soldier stood apart from the others. She was small for her species and looked terrified. Veterans nearby were laughing at her, making jokes about her size. Kira walked over to the young soldier and placed a hand on her shoulder. Do not listen to them, she said gently. I know exactly how you feel. I was once the smallest person in the room too. The young soldier looked up with hope in her eyes, and you became a commander. A legend. Kira smiled. It was a warm smile, full of understanding and kindness. I became someone who refused to quit. That is all any of us can do. Give everything we have, and never stop fighting for what matters. She squeezed the soldier's shoulder. Come on, let me show you around. Welcome to the family. As they walked away together, Zara and Vexthel watched from a distance. "She changed everything," Zara said quietly. Vexthel nodded. "She showed the galaxy what humans truly are. Not the strongest species, not the most advanced, but perhaps the most stubborn. And sometimes that is exactly what the universe needs." Above them, the stars shone bright with the promise of peace. A peace won by a 17-year-old girl who refused to accept that impossible meant forever.